Hey everyone, I'm Sean Massey, VP of Growth at Pacific, and I want to welcome you to the very first episode of At the Helm. We're going to be talking to business leaders in the performance marketing space at all kinds of brands about the unique challenges they face in their industry and then the different strategies they employ to solve for them. And today we're talking to Amy Elmayan, the Director of SEO at Paperless Post. And if you're an SEO or you've played in the space and you want to get in the weeds with us, this is a great conversation to hear about a lot of different technical SEO strategies on an e-commerce type of site. I hope you enjoy. Hello again. Thank you, Amy, for joining and taking time out of your day to chat SEO with me. I always appreciate it. And hopefully our internet works this time.
Yes.
Okay, real quick. What's your current role and where do you work? And then maybe give me a quick background on yourself in SEO and maybe in marketing in general.
Yep. So currently I am Director of SEO at Paperless Post. We do online cards and invitations for every possible type of event and occasion. I've been doing SEO since 2011. I got started working in link building for an agency. I did that for several years and then eventually transitioned into more of a holistic SEO role, working in-house at Pearson. Over the years, I've done both in-house and agency side work at a variety of companies in different niches from higher education, healthcare, finance, and e-commerce.
Wow. Okay. So first of all, the link building piece, everyone cuts their chops on SEO or in link building in the beginning, right? That's kind of how you start. You have to go through the fire and then eventually you get to do kind of holistic SEO. Had you started back in those early days?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty common entry pathway. It was an interesting time to start as a link builder because the Penguin update had just hit and a lot of things were, a lot of people weren't crazy about link building. So when we would do our outreach, we got hit with some very not enthusiastic responses. Yeah.
Speaking of, I know we're jumping ahead, but helpful content update. Have you seen any impact on Paperless Post or anything else you're monitoring?
No, I haven't seen any impact whatsoever on Paperless. I was not really expecting to see any type of negative impact. I mean, we don't really do AI generated content or anything that it was supposedly targeting. So I wasn't concerned to begin with, but no, I haven't seen any impact one way or another yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, that's good. Okay, so you mentioned higher education, and then I know you were at Tupperware for a while, so you had e-commerce experience as well. So with Paperless Post, you guys, would you call yourself an e-commerce site, or how would you describe the site in general and like the challenge that you face with that brand?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we are an e-commerce site, but we're an e-commerce site that doesn't really sell any physical products. All of our cards are digital, with the one exception being we do have Paperless Post Party Shop, which sells party decorations and supplies, and those are like actual physical products. But our main product is all online, which is interesting because we do compete in SEO and the SERP with a lot of companies that either offer hybrid, so you can do like online or download and print, and then also just with plain brick and mortar card stores like Hallmark.
Okay. So is it fair to say that you might have different competitors that also offer a majority of their services or product virtually or online only versus some that might be brick and mortar, Hallmark maybe, or someone else like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a combination. And depending upon the particular query type, it tends to vary. So if someone just searches birthday cards without specifying a type, the competitor is going to be a little bit different than if somebody searches for online birthday cards specifically.
Gotcha. Okay. Is Amazon one of your competitors? Do they rank for some of these?
Not currently. Maybe more in like the image pack, but not really in like the blue links.
Okay, cool. Is there a local intent to any of the queries too? Like, is anyone doing a geo modifier onto any of those searches?
Not really, but what I have noticed is certain queries will trigger like the map pack, for example. Like I think birthday cards is one of those. If I search it, I'll get like a local Hallmark store, or maybe like a Target or something like that. So certain queries will trigger local intent, but for the most part, like no, our actual competitors, like the blue links, if you will, there's no really localized pages that show.
Gotcha. Okay. Speaking of blue links, is that kind of the field that you're playing on, or is there anything else SERP feature wise that you kind of are targeting?
That's the main field that we're playing in right now. I would say, I think the image pack is something that we want to continue to optimize for. Yeah, but mainly that. I'd also say something that we started playing in recently with Paperless Post Party Shop is Merchant Center for Google Shopping. And so that for anyone who doesn't know, it's a little bit different in that you don't just submit an XML sitemap and show up. There's this whole process. You have to kind of submit your product feed through the Merchant Center, and then you start displaying. Google started it back in like 2020 at the start of COVID to kind of help retailers. It's something I implemented when I was at Tupperware, and I did it again for Paperless Post. So.
Okay. You're leading me into segues, which are perfect. So you said you're doing this for Paperless. Like, what is in your role right now as director of SEO? What's under your purview? Like, what are some of the strategies or like ongoing things that you or your team are working on?
Oh, a lot of different things at the moment. The good news is there's a ton of cross-functional support for SEO, so we're trying to knock out a lot of things at the same time.
Nice.
One of the big things is a lot of technical cleanup. We made a ton of progress in the short time that I've been there, but one of the things with, I think any e-commerce site, but Paperless Post was no exception, is when a user's on a category page, there's a lot of different filters, which creates a lot of different query params, which creates a lot of potential for duplicative content. So making sure that we have canonicals implemented properly, making sure that Google's only crawling the pages we want it to crawl. One thing I noticed day one on the job is our internal site search results had been spammed. And so cleaned that up.
How so?
If you did like a site colon search for Paperless Post, you would see links for like buy ivermectin online. So first thing I did was use the removals request tool, and I got all of the internal site search results out of the index because it was 99.9% spam.
Yeah. So you had all this bloat too, probably with your crawl budget, I'm assuming.
Yeah, a little bit of bloat. We also had an interesting issue that I've never encountered before. We had some kind of erroneous pagination. So for example, if you were on a category page and the visible pagination on the page went up to page like 15, in the source code, Google could actually crawl up to page like 105. And it was really strange. It was like a hidden section on the page where the pagination was not working as expected. And so we've gotten all that cleaned up, and it's really helped improve crawl budget and ensure that Google is only crawling the pages that we want to crawl. So that's definitely one of the things that we've been working on.
Wait, real quick, because I know some people listening to this are going to nerd out with us on this.
Yes.
So you canonicaled the parameters, and then did you use the robots text file to basically block any of the params with like a wildcard string or something?
I did, because some of the canonicals were implemented properly, but Google was still spending what I felt was too much time crawling them. And so I know this is a bit, I don't know, some people may disagree with this, but I still felt the need to block some of them via robots.txt. So maybe a bit controversial, but yeah, so we've implemented some additional rules to the robots.txt file. One of them actually just rolled out yesterday, but yes, I have blocked some of the additional params in an effort to try to get Google to spend their time and effort crawling the pages I actually want crawled. Yeah,
we ran into that problem with a similar client and did both those steps, and then we did a crawl and we found that we were still internally linking to a lot of the variants. And so then we had to kind of update internal links as well so that we're not sending Googlebot on this journey saying like, hey, go ahead and crawl this, but we also don't want you to.
That's actually interesting. That's a project that's still sort of underway. So on our individual category pages, if you click a category and you click a card, it's parameterized. The cards are parameterized with a query string that includes what category it is. And the reason for that is because a card can appear in multiple categories with different text, of course, but because of the nature of like an online card, you could easily use the same design for a birthday card and a wedding card. You just swap the text and it goes from happy birthday to congratulations. And so the reason why all these individual cards have query params, and that also powers the breadcrumbs right now. They're dynamic based on the category that the user would have accessed the card from. The problem from a crawl budget standpoint is we are linking internally to all these parameterized individual card pages. So I'm working with our engineering team to come up with a solution so we can still kind of preserve like the information on what category that card's a part of, how the user got there, but without utilizing query params. So it's still a work in progress. I don't think it's a huge SEO problem, only because the majority of our traffic goes to like our category pages rather than our individual cards.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the way you want it to be structured too? Like in terms of traffic allocation, are you trying to generate more to the cards themselves, or do you want to keep it at the category, subcategory level?
I wouldn't be mad if we generated more traffic to the individual cards, but I still do think that the bigger game is on the category pages. I think a lot more users, intent-wise, are going to search for wedding invitations or birthday cards, right? They don't know exactly the specific design they likely want, but they know what category, which actually kind of leads me into another.
Go ahead, take us there. I cut you off on the list of things that are under your role.
Yeah. So, users searching for a particular thing, I think, is where the big opportunity is. And something that was kind of in the works when I joined Paperless is they're testing out the idea of utilizing themes. So on a couple pages of Paperless Post right now, one of them is holiday invitations and one of them is kids' birthday invitations. In the side nav, in addition to color, shape, size, there's a filter for themes. And what's unique about that is when you click on a theme, it doesn't actually add like a query param. It creates a new individual URL. So if you're on kid's birthday and you click dinosaur, you get /dinosaur added to the end of the URL. So it's a unique URL that can be indexed by Google. That being said, right now there's a lot of kind of technical hiccups with the pages. Sometimes the H1 isn't actually updating when you choose a theme as it should.
Gotcha.
So we're in the process of kind of cleaning up a lot of that, but it's kind of a precursor for the larger project of rolling out themes to a lot more pages, people throwing weddings, baby showers. I think themes are huge from an intent standpoint. And we have internal data that shows that for the existing themes that we do have live, when a user views a theme page, they are significantly more likely to convert and actually send a card. I'd say about 5 times more. And I think if you think about it from like a user intent standpoint, it makes a lot of sense, right? So if I'm searching for wedding invitation, I'm still not quite sure what I want, but if I'm searching for like, black and gold wedding invitation or bohemian wedding invitation, I've already planned it. I know exactly what I'm looking for. And so I think there's a lot higher intent behind those types of searches.
Yeah. So maybe you were going to get to this, but the customer journey and how they relate to the specific categorized pages you have and the different verticals. Do you have something that you're working on to or maybe you already have mapped this out to kind of figure out what content they should be seeing if it's unique to that type of a page? Or do you have like an ideal category page that you think applies to all different types of categories?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Right now, like the layout of our category pages is more or less the same no matter what category you're on. You kind of have like a hero image, the H1, a little bit of intro text. Then you see the actual carousel of cards. And at the bottom, there's a footer copy block with some text and sometimes some internal linking. I think as far as the user journey, though, we do analyze we have a lot of like unique data on kind of the path our users take and, what they do on their path to conversion. And something that we've noticed both from kind of internal data, from looking at competitors, from doing surveys, we're really big into customer feedback. As we just launched, we launched a new feature called blocks, which is like, if you think about for wedding invitations, we can kind of play in the same space as like the Knot or Zola in terms of making an invitation almost like a wedding website. So if you think about it, when you're sending out a wedding invitation, a lot of the times people are going to want to know about accommodations, places to stay, travel plans. So you can include all of that kind of sort of outside the actual invitation. There's kind of a space at the bottom of the page.
Yeah, all the attached information that goes into the event, right?
Right. Yeah, all the attached information. So if it's a wedding, you could showcase your bridal party. You could showcase the hotel options. If it's a professional conference, you could showcase the speakers. So things like that. And we've noticed that those things are things that users are really interested in. And we're trying to figure out, like, for different types of events, what types of blocks make most sense for users to see. So for weddings, maybe it's accommodations. Maybe for kids' birthdays, it's something else. So we're still trying to play around with some of those features.
How would you test that, or how would you roll something out? Are you going to like kind of make a change and then do like a pre-post to kind of see how it performs, or do you have like a split like experience? I don't know if you have plans already.
Yeah, I think we've sort of fully rolled out blocks, and I think right now what we're testing is like defaulting certain blocks to on or off. So there's lots of different options you could make to whatever, but we're trying to kind of figure out which ones make sense for users to utilize, and then we can review data showing, the usage of blocks, which ones are more commonly used for different types of events, and kind of inform some decisions. I know a recent A/B test that we rolled out actually on native. We do have an app on both iOS and Google Play.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. We tested the idea of like eliminating almost kind of our PDP page. So like if you were on our app and you're scrolling through a category and you picked a card that you like on web, the user flow is you land, you see the card, and then there's a button that you would click to start actually creating and designing it. And I know they recently rolled out an A/B test where instead of getting to that page where you see the card, you immediately go, when you click the card, you're immediately taking it into the create experience. I'm not sure the outcome of that yet, but I know it's something that we are going to test.
Okay. I didn't even ask, do you guys have majority mobile or desktop traffic, or like how much is mobile, and are you trying to push them into the app, or is it kind of like a deep linking situation?
Yeah, good question. It's not as like different as you may think. I do think the majority of traffic is mobile, but it's interesting. We find a lot of users that maybe start on mobile, go through and will actually convert, like finish the send on desktop. So they may browse on mobile, but they'll actually go and finish the send on desktop. App right now is not a ton of our traffic. We're trying to improve that. We don't have a ton of deep linking as it is, but that's actually another thing that I'm kind of working on right now, is trying to get more users to download the app, and then also just ASO in general, which I honestly haven't had a ton of experience yet with in my career, but it's been interesting. So I've provided some recs for implementation for how we can hopefully rank better in Google Play and the Android or iOS App Store. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one thing you're not saying is, in the role of director of SEO, you have so many things you want to do, and you only have a finite amount of resources and time to really get it done, right? So like in your case, it sounds like you have a team that's helping you be cross-functional and actually work with other teams or their own development to get this launched. But even then, like we always run into sprint issues with dev teams, trying to figure out you have to triage or prioritize all your different recs. So the technical SEO that you started with is a good example of like things that you think are glaring that you really need to fix. But at the same time, you have all these like growth strategies of like, okay, well, I also want to make net new content in these new page types, but where does that fall in the priority order, And then you got to associate lift with each of them. It's sometimes it's a nightmare, right?
Yeah, it's challenging. That was one of the big projects I did, and we kind of do quarterly planning, but so when I first came on board, I had to put out a plan of like, here's what I want to do. And I had to kind of try to size it, not only to traffic, but to dollars, because at the end of the day, that's what matters for business. And from there, we tried to kind of put together a plan of attack of how we're going to roll things out, using the ICE score, impact, confidence, and ease. And so a lot of the decisions that were made, a lot of the tech stuff were things that were lower lift for the engineering team, but I thought would be potentially higher impact. That's the dream, right? Like low effort, high impact, but there's only so many of those before you have to move to the higher effort items. So, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of the ICE score methodology, I think you were the one that championed that when we worked together in the past briefly, and I use that all the time. I love it.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. Okay, so talk to me about like the different things on that list of ever evolving things you want to do, like maybe past strategies you've done at other companies or things you haven't gotten to yet. Like what to you are like your favorite go-to tactics when you're presented with the challenge of, some quarterly goal or annual goal that you're trying to reach. And obviously you have the things that you want to fix, right? But what are some of those like net new, or maybe like, or it doesn't even have to be net new. It could be something that might be like, people don't often think to check blank, like what are some of those strategies that you love or you keep finding yourself coming back to?
Yeah, one thing that I've only kind of been a part of once, but I think it could be a big opportunity for Paperless Post, would be to internationalize the site. So we did that at Tupperware. So at Tupperware, we have Tupperware.com, but we had 4 different what we called store views. So we had es.tupperware.com, which was the Spanish version of the US site. We had Tupperware.ca, which was Canada English, and then we had fr.tupperware.ca, which was Canada French. And then you get into making sure href lang tags are configured properly. But we actually just got feedback from a user recently that wanted to know why they couldn't translate the site into Spanish. So I think that that would be probably a ton of work to translate everything. You have to think about how many cards we have and translating all of that. I mean, no small amount of work, but I think it could be a really interesting, larger kind of opportunity. Not necessarily something on the super short term, but I think from a long-term perspective, it could be really interesting.
It would open you up to all these other markets, essentially, right? And even in the U.S. with Spanish, if you could offer that service or translate that. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's like kind of a bigger thing. I think maybe a bit more niche thing. I think that we want to try to figure out is a way to better scale and improve internal linking, like across the board. Right now, we have a main navigation, which has kind of served historically as the way to internally link to everything. And I think in some cases, our main nav is maybe a bit crowded and could be pared down a little bit to try to focus on the most important pages. But then we also have a secondary left nav. So if you're on a category page, you do see internal links to other pages. One thing I did learn in the past couple of years when we worked together is like the power of kind of smart, if you will, semi-automated internal linking. Because I know in the
Mm-hmm.
past, like when I've tried to roll out internal linking, it's either been incredibly manual to the point where like I'm manually inserting links within the body of content, which is super unsustainable. I've also tested out like various WordPress plugins that are supposed to automate internal linking. They were all terrible. So I think the idea of creating some sort of like custom logic to implement smart related links at scale is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I've already kind of brought this up to our engineering team. I've gotten support on it. I think it'll probably take us a little while to kind of work out the details, but I've kind of learned firsthand the importance of like smart strategic internal linking.
Yeah. So in the smart linking, for you, is it a goal to maybe distribute equity to other pages that you're trying to bring up? Or, you know, sometimes like the other angle is discoverability, like you just want more pages indexed or found, but they're orphaned, or maybe they're too far from the home. Is it both, or do you have a use case specifically for Paperless Post that you would like to do?
I think it's both. I think one particular use case is our blog. Our blog, the internal linking, I think it's not, I think the logic is sort of it just links to like the most recent 3 published posts within a category. And so with only linking to the most 3 published posts, there's a lot of blogs that don't get a lot of link juice, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, I think with the blog, we could stand to benefit quite a bit. I think also our category pages too, we do have a left nav. It's with some links. It's not quite as customizable as I would like, but I think it's about, I hate the term link sculpting, but I think like being strategic about.
I didn't say it myself, but I was going to say it.
I hate that term because I don't know. It sounds so manipulative, and I don't think I don't think that's really like the intent of what it should be. But I think links to like guide the user on an ideal path, not to overwhelm them with too many links that you kind of get into like what we've called internally at Paperless Post is like the paradox of choice, right? It's like too many choices. You don't know where the heck to go, and trying to balance that with like, you know, I don't know, trying to balance out with not having orphaned pages. I don't want to overly rely on the HTML sitemap or the XML sitemap or anything like that. So
totally agree with you. The paradox of choice thing, did I ever tell you that real quick Trader Joe's anecdote about paradox of choice?
No.
I'm going to sound like an old guy now telling stories, but so Trader Joe's, one of the reasons people love it, but they don't know they love it, is because they give you limited options. So there's only like maybe 2 or 3 versions of a specific sauce or a certain mac and cheese in the freezer section. You go versus the grocery store has like, 18 choices for tomato sauce. And, it's the paradox of choice, right? So if I have to choose this one between the other 2, I know which one I'm leaning towards, and I'll just choose it. And I'm more often to buy than I am if I'm overwhelmed with choices. And I thought that's such a little clever thing to take into a website, like if you're on a category page, for example, or something like that, and you have like, maybe you still need to show all the different options, right? But at the top, you have a kind of a prescribed or like a featured section that's got like the most popular, right? And from there, a user can just choose, oh, well, I really like this one and these other 2 aren't speaking to me, versus like, here's 104 options that you have, and you have to scroll alphabetically through them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to know too, well, first of all, I cut you off. Was there anything else that strategy-wise that you like, that you've been wanting to do?
Oh gosh, I think those are 2 good ones. Another one is just trying to figure out how to expand, I think, the amount of blog content and also like the kind of category supporting footer content that we produce. I'm just trying to figure out how to scale that in a sustainable way. So just trying to figure out how to get additional copywriting support. That's something that we are working on. And also some duplicate content issues. There are some legacy duplicative category pages that have been really, really interesting. So we had 2 different we still do, but we're in the process of cleaning all this up. So there's actually 2 different pages right now for wedding invitations. There's a group level page and a category level page. And what was interesting is it looks like someone before me realized it was an issue and kind of tried to resolve it by putting a canonical from one URL to the other. But right. Google wasn't respecting the canonical. So I kind of had to try to figure out, why is that? Why is Google not respecting it?
Mm-hmm.
And the pages had the exact same H1, the same title tag, had basically the same cards. The only difference I could find was that footer copy block at the bottom of the page. The one that had the more substantial copy was performing better than the other. And so something we've been testing out, we've been rolling it out kind of slowly to measure impact, to make sure we don't have any negative impact, not only on traffic, but also conversions, is instead of the canonical, let's throw and redirect one to the other. Let's truly consolidate them and see how
make it permanent.
Yeah. And on the few pages where we have rolled it out, so far the impact has either been nothing or positive, depending upon which page I'm analyzing. So something we're continuing to work through.
Yeah, that's an ever evolving problem, right? Sometimes you can take care of them all, but then I don't know if this is the case with you guys, but we've been part of sites, and I know you have too, where like some net new pages get created and you don't even know about it, right? And then all of a sudden you're doing some look in GSC or crawl, and you're like, wait, hold on, what are all these net new ones? I've already redirected some of these other ones, so you have to like kind of catch them as they go. But I don't know if you have that problem or not.
Yeah, I think it's more.
Hopefully you don't.
No, it's more just like legacy stuff. We have like a full-time director of merchandising, and I've asked her like, why do these two different pages exist? And she's just not sure. So
that makes sense. I wanted to ask you, so we've been talking about your favorite strategies now, and as we're winding down, I kind of always like to ask, like, what do you see forward looking? So like, it doesn't have to be 2023. It could be in Q4, for example, but like, what are some of the things that you think are going to start becoming a bigger deal for you guys to focus on? Like sometimes this helpful content update, I've heard from people talk about like authorship is going to be a big thing and not having these unbioed articles or things out there. Is anything coming to mind for you, or maybe in Paperless Post space, is anything specifically becoming a thing you'll have to start thinking about?
That's interesting. I don't think like authorship is as big of a thing because we're not a your money, your life. Like I have worked for YMYL sites before, and I think authorship is kind of more important there. I don't know. I don't know if there's one thing specific to Paperless Post. I think just continuing to write good quality content that is relevant to users. And I mean, that's always going to be the case for SEO. I think one thing that we're still kind of work in progress is transitioning a lot of our like messaging, blog content all over the place from being COVID specific to where, we have blog posts about like how to throw a virtual or like a drive-by baby shower. And so like trying to like readapt and kind of rewrite a bunch of stuff to target more in real life events to kind of meet users where they're at. And so I know I've heard a lot in my few months at Paperless about kind of how COVID impacted them and their business. And so just trying to make sure that we shift all of our messaging accordingly, I think is really important.
Oh yeah. Messaging wise to make sure it resonates, but also search trends change. Like I'm sure search volume is going way down for all of those different virtual drive-by type event queries.
It's really interesting. So when I have to analyze our blog traffic on like a year-over-year basis, it looks like it's way down, but if you exclude the COVID specific blogs, it's actually up. So it's just kind of thinking about, reporting it. Like I have to kind of keep that in mind when framing it to leadership. It's down, but that's because, not as many people are reading these COVID blogs anymore, which is okay. Right? Yeah.
That was one of my last questions for you was reporting. Yeah. Do you have like we've built data studio reports in the past. We've done PowerPoints, a million of them and things like that. But do you have specific KPIs or things that you like to focus on in your SEO reporting that maybe speaks to the strategy and the work that you're doing, but also to the C-level people that need to interpret these numbers and reports to make investment decisions? Is there like kind of your favorite way of showing a report for what you do?
Yeah, I say tool-wise, it's still Data Studio, and I think anything with a visual is always helpful. Sometimes I still like to talk a little too techy, and sometimes when I just talk and it's not supported by a visual, people start getting lost. And so I think visuals are always helpful. I'd say as far as like KPIs right now, I like to focus a lot on non-branded traffic. One thing that's really, really tricky though about Search Console, and has been something I've had to educate quite a bit on, is when you still if I set up a filter and I say branded search is query contains paperless and non-branded is query does not contain paperless, right? What gets confusing is if you add up query contains paperless and query does not contain paperless, theoretically should equal total.
But yeah, it doesn't match.
It never does. And so I think so just kind of framing it that way, knowing that data is highly sampled and aggregated and completely imperfect, but still, I think relatively wise, if we increase by 50% non-branded traffic, and as long as we keep our filters consistent, it's still meaningful. So I'd say that's one thing. Something that we are working on getting better at is I want to start speaking more to like things like conversion rate and revenue. There's been a long work in progress though to kind of get our data to a point where we can correspond landing pages to revenue, Google Analytics is not our source of truth. It never has been. We have an internal looker set up, and it's got all kinds of data, but reporting at a channel level is not something that we started looking seriously in until recently. And so I'm super excited now that the data is kind of almost finalized in a point where we can use it, because then what I want to start focusing on more is not only pages that drive traffic, but pages that drive revenue, because at the end of the day, that's what's most important.
Yeah, and connecting the dots from Looker to with your non-brand traffic reports and everything else that you're doing is like the holy grail, right? But if you do that, that's the easiest way to prove return on investment.
Yeah, it's so tricky though, right? Because we're never going to get query level data into Looker. And I can never say with 100%, right? You can never say with 100% certainty that it was a branded or a non-branded search. And like for some sites, it's more cut and dry, right? When I worked at Tupperware, the homepage only ranked for Tupperware. Like it only ranked for non-branded terms. It was a lot more black and white. Whereas Paperless, it's about 50-50, right? We have good brand awareness. Lots of people are searching for Paperless Post, but the homepage also ranks #1 for online invitations. And so it's a lot more muddy than like somebody may think.
Yeah, that's a solid ranking, by the way. Nice flex.
Yeah, I can't take credit for that. That was in place before I got here. But hopefully we're going to move up more in those non-branded terms over the next few months.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're just adding on top. Well, cool. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Is there any other wisdom or anything else you want to impart before we go?
I think that's it. Thank you. This is fun.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do another one soon.
Yeah.
Thank you again for your time today. And I know that we went full 30 minutes on this one, but I thought this was really helpful. So hopefully the listeners do too.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Have a great day.
Bye.